Today we're in conversation with Recondite. My name's Tigerlight and this is the Beatport podcast. Recondite is an artist unwilling to let the pressures of the outside world affect his art, be that label bosses, social media or even his fans. Having released 4 critically acclaimed albums and EPs on many labels such as Tastemaker Imprint, Acid Test, Inner Visions and Scuba's Hot Flush Recordings, this is an artist that won't be stopped and is full of vision. Beatport Podcast. Recondite, welcome to the Beatport headquarters in Berlin. It's very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, it would be really nice to take a step back, go from the beginning of your childhood and kind of find out about you as an artist and your amazing music and love for nature. I was interested to know about your upbringing and how that has influenced you growing up in, was it Lower Bavaria?
Right. Well, one of the things that I just recently thought about is that I had a lot of alone time when I was a child because my parents lived pretty far or let's say pretty much without neighbors, and it wasn't like super rural like you imagine in, I don't know, like Siberia or something, but still, if you don't have any like neighbors, or if you don't have really like a infrastructure like a public transport or a bus or something, or you can't go by bike to your friends or something like this, then you're always dependent on your parents, that they drive you to a school friend or something, or that you stay with the school friend after school or something and the parents pick you up. So usually after school I went home with my mom. She's a teacher and she had like the same schedules usually, like when her school was off, pretty much mine was off as well. So she picked me up from school and we went home, and then I had some lunch and I did homework, and then usually I went outside. I strolled around, I did whatever kids do, you know, like playing with the bow and arrow and playing basketball alone, going to the woods, pretending like I'm hunting some deer or whatever. And yeah, I spent a lot of time alone, and obviously it's very quiet then. And this is a very strong childhood memory, this like alone time in the nature, no sound, no voices around, also no traffic, also a big area which was like, let's say, maybe not ours in terms of our property, like a forest or something close to our house, but there was never anything going on other than maybe once or twice a year the owner like cutting some wood there. And otherwise it was just me hanging out there, maybe 3 times a year with a friend of mine or something. And so it felt like, as a, you know, like, I don't know, 9 or 10-year-old child, it felt like it was mine, you know, like my area. That's my home. I kind of own this forest here, which obviously wasn't the case, but it felt like it, just this like symbolic feeling or this metaphoric feeling of having like this all this land like for you now, you know, just as a feeling for how you could feel small then, you know, like and this is also something that I really have, I think, deep in my understanding of my upbringing, that I have this approach to nature, spending a lot of time, a lot of alone time, also enjoying it, but also like being influenced by that in some ways, positive and maybe also negative.
Were there lots of mountains there too?
Yeah, but more like soft rolling hills.
Okay.
It's like the pre-Alp landscape. Like it's in 1 hour, 45 minutes, or like 45 minutes you need basically to get to the first really proper mountains by car. But there it's just rolling hills, like 500-600 meters height. But pretty up and down, like you can have nice bike rides there, but they are quite exhausting. Yeah.
And your mum was a teacher, your dad a javelin thrower.
Yeah, that's true actually. Like he was in his youth leagues and stuff, he was pretty good. He was also, I think, second best in Germany in the youth javelin throwing competition. And
was that his job, like professionally then?
Yeah, you know, in Germany there are those big, like, let's say for example, maybe you know Bayer, the company that makes like medicine and stuff. They also have like the sports section, you know, where they have like, I don't know, like teams of, I don't know, like swimming or basketball or football. Bayer Leverkusen, for example, is a first division German soccer team. And he was working in a chemical industry firm at that time, and they had this sports section as well, which was organized very professionally. And the thing is that they work there in this company, but on the side they also are professional athletes, and that was his situation. Yeah, and in the end he took the road of like maintaining the not sports related career in this industry, in this business. Yeah.
Did you train with him?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. He showed me how to throw the
javelin.
And also like where you throw this really heavy iron ball.
Yeah. I don't know what that's called, but yeah, I know
kind
it.
Of push it, you know.
Yeah.
And you turn. Also with the discus, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he showed me about that. Yeah. And also we played a little bit of basketball, football. Yeah, we did some sports together for sure.
So then from a young age, like sport and movement was really part of your everyday life?
Yes, definitely.
I've heard you saying in interviews that you really didn't apply yourself at school, that you were a pretty naughty student or bad student. And I was wondering, considering now you're such a focused artist and such a prolific musician, if you could go back in time and change your approach to school, knowing what you know now about focus and discipline in that sense, would you change anything?
Definitely not.
So if anyone's listening and they're struggling with school right now but love your music, would you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I would say that they should really, even though they feel maybe not at home at school or they are struggling with grades or teachers or other students, I would suggest to sit down and really analyze the personal situation. Like, why are they struggling? Like, even if they are kids and they maybe cannot connect dots in every aspect yet, but they still should think about and also talk to the parents about why is this happening? Like, what are the roots of the problems here? And then just realize it, just reflect it. Not even handling out of the maybe outcoming reflections, but just knowing why it is. And then just keep on going and see what happens and stay true to yourself and try to avoid, you know, like doing really bad stuff. You know, like I was maybe let's say a noisy, how do you say, pupil?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe not concentrated or not focused, with bad grades sometimes. But I didn't do any bad things, you know. I didn't beat up school friends, or I didn't really insult teachers, or I didn't get into criminal stuff or something, you know. So I adjust my own mindset, and I just had a deep feeling of not agreeing with having to study certain subjects, you know. Like, I had this thing like that I just couldn't do it, you know. Like, even my mom, as she was a teacher, obviously she tried to give me help to study maths and stuff, which obviously didn't work at all, you know, her and me together. But she even tried to get other older pupils, yeah, that's maybe like 4 or 5 grades up, that they would help me. But even this for me was always like I was like super not concentrated, and it was hard for them. Usually I had great relation with them, but we ended up talking about soccer and not about, I don't know, like binomic formula.
It was a good idea of your mum's though, right? She was thinking, oh, he's one of his peers, that's going to help out. But that didn't help. Okay.
No, unfortunately not. I think from the early days I had this thing going on, like I have to find my own way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I never was like devastated or like I never felt hopeless. I don't know why, but maybe the basic core of support and also love that my parents gave me also like this self-esteem that told me, okay, it's going to be fine. Like, okay, you have a problem here with the grades, but you're going to figure it out at some point. It's not the end of the world.
But you managed to get good enough grades to be able to go and study physiotherapy.
Yeah, but like kind of through the back door.
Okay. Did your mum pull some strings?
No, actually not. This one I handled by myself. This degree, you are actually allowed to go to the physiotherapy school, even without having the school degree that you would need normally. So like, kind of a trick there. And so I made the massage therapy school 2 years, and then I was allowed to go to the physiotherapy school and then I also had a motivation to do this. The subjects in this school were like really interesting, like anatomy, physiology, applied, physics in terms of like how joints move, like what angles and stuff. And I was really into this stuff already as a child, maybe because of the sports interest that my father kind of also evoked. And also I was really interested in like transforming bodies, kind of because I was a little bit chubby actually when I was like 8, 9 years old, until I got more into sports. So this was always like a little topic for me somehow. And then at this school I felt really well, and it went down actually easy for me. I wasn't struggling at all anymore because I had interest in learning this kind of stuff. Because it was very applied, it was very hands-on. And then I actually finished the physiotherapy school with a pretty good grading, a pretty good degree. And then even though it was through the back door, like with 19, 20 years old, I already had the finished physiotherapy exams and was working already when I was 20 and was able to make my own living basically. So I moved out and went to Munich when I was 19 and had a job there, and from there on I went through some different steps in my job career as a physiotherapist.
You're listening to Rufus by Recondite. got your studies sorted, you've left your wild child days behind you.
Wild.
Wild in the woods, child days behind you, and then was it around 2005 you decided to move home and become a producer?
Yeah.
What did your parents think? Like, great, moving back in, you've just done your studies, he's got his career, and now he's coming home. How was that?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. It was really a bit like that, like you just described. Now, the thing was, I was working in Munich, like I said. That was like the first time that I moved into a big city, and it was kind of tough on me. I really went home every weekend. I had a girlfriend also at that time in my Bavarian home area, and I wanted also to see her, so I went to her house every weekend. And I remember always also taking my bike to the train to go to Munich and back, and every time on Friday afternoon and back Monday morning at 4:30 in the morning with the train and stuff. And I wasn't used to city life yet, basically. So, and I didn't really understand it yet as well, because I was just completely inexperienced in like urban life, basically. And I was also a bit overworked because I also got offer of a second job to work as a physiotherapist for a pretty decent football soccer team in Munich. So it was like overwhelming a bit. And a friend of mine, he was working in a 5-star hotel in Austria in the Alps, close to Innsbruck. He was actually becoming like the spa manager there. And they had like a huge spa. It was a huge hotel with like 600-700 beds and like a huge spa, really nice, on top of a mountain. Crazy location actually. And they were looking for a physiotherapist who was handling massage, but also like the personal training aspect. And they had this little house next to the hotel where the employees were living, and they offered me like a little apartment there, and for basically almost no money, because they had to do it, because otherwise like you can't just drive there every day, because it was really remote. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this, because it's like in the middle of the most beautiful nature ever, and there are actually friends working there, because I broke up also with my girlfriend, so I wanted to change something. And that was a really important kind of step, because besides all this, I all the time was like really crazy about collecting music. Like, especially at that time, I really discovered electronic music. Before I was mostly collecting hip-hop and listening to hip-hop, but at that time I really found out about different sides of electronic music. Like I remember like Dominic Eulberg, Vainomi Brothers, the whole Dial Records catalog was very important for me at the beginning.
What were your sources of finding this stuff while you were up in
Internet, for sure. Yeah. Also the small record store in Lower Bavaria, but I was really dependent on finding the stuff that he selected and put in the store. I wasn't able to really dig, because his electronic music section was like super small. But sometimes he had some really good stuff. Once I found like the Panther du Prince album, This Bliss, I think it was called, just randomly in his little record store somewhere in Lower Bavaria. I didn't even know about Panther du Prince at that time, but I was really happy that I found it. So I was basically working there in this hotel. I had an internet connection. I was digging the internet all day and listening to music while I was running around in the forest. I was working on clients like during the day. It was a pretty chilled life actually. It was kind of what I was used to, being alone in the nature and then going to school / working, and I kind of felt at home there, so I was able to develop also my mindset, because I was feeling more at ease. And then I went to Australia with my next girlfriend then at the time. We like this trip, we went to Thailand, New Zealand, like 3 months or something like this. And after that we didn't have anywhere to go, because I had to kind of quit my job to do this. And so I had to go home basically. So but on this trip I decided, okay, I'm gonna switch from digging for music to trying to make it, because my mom had a new husband at that time, and he was a music producer, And I already like saw a little bit of what he was doing. Like he had a studio, like slowly but surely built up a studio in the house of my mom. And I saw he had like synthesizers. He was working on Cubase. He had like some knowledge about room treatment, audio-wise and stuff, microphones, etc. And I said, okay, I'm gonna move into the basement of my mom's house. And I'm gonna see what he can teach me.
Amazing.
And then I was there. I found a job quickly because in this area where I grew up, being a physiotherapist, you always find a job quite easily because it's called the Bäderdreieck, which basically means the hot spring triangle, because there are hot springs there, like sulfur hot springs, and that's why there are a lot of like clinics, therapy centers and stuff. And so I found a job quickly. I moved into the basement first. I set up a small studio. Husband of my mom gave me a keyboard. I bought a little MIDI interface so that I could play with the keyboard on my software. At first I used Cubase, but I switched to Ableton 5 quite quickly. And and then I don't know, I had my first steps, and I was like, from the beginning on, I was hooked. And the thing was like, I was super proud of every beat I made. Like, even if it was like nothing, like a metronome, tick, 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 tick. But I was like, that's great. It's amazing.
What, were you patting yourself on the back like, oh, you're
kind of.
That's
yes.
amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
So when you were making those first beats, like how were you constructing them? What samples were you using, or were you using? Yeah, where were you getting your sounds from then?
So I had no idea how to get a bass drum sound. I didn't even know that there were 808 samples. I had no idea what an 808 was. Like, no idea, like really. And basically I just took, I don't know, like sound bits of a recording that I did with this little Zoom H2 recorder that I had, and I was trying to build a bass drum out of this. The approach of somebody who knows nothing. In the end, like, these kind of bass drums were not satisfying. It was like clicking noise, not enough bass body, kind of harsh, just hard to put into a mix down because, you know, it was an experiment, really experiment of an unexperienced person. Also I used some vocal samples out of my favorite TV shows or movies, which were like cheap slapstick stuff. I don't know, like nothing really deep or something like that. But it was fun. Basically, I knew it was just experiment. It was shit, but also I was proud of it.
You were playing?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where creativity is born.
And trying it. Yeah, right. But it was super fun. I think that was the most important thing. Like, I really got hooked to the process, and I just enjoyed doing it. Also, I was DJing on the side, so this interest was there already. I started from DJing to hip-hop to also electronic music at that time, and I developed a little DJ career in this area, you know, in small bars, small clubs there. It was close to the Austrian border, so I played in Austria a few times. Passau was the first bigger city where I was playing at. But all that was far away from the name Recondite at that time. Like, I didn't have that name yet. So yeah, then I moved out again, found an apartment there, wasn't occupying the basement of my mom anymore. And then I was living 2 years there in an apartment. I had a really nice basement which had like a separate door to the outside, which I could always leave open and have like the nature kind of in the room. It was kind of like a garage basement kind of room, and it was built on a hill, so it was like this little angle, this little like steep hill where you could go out even though you were in the basement. I don't know if you can imagine what I mean. But it was quite nice, and I could, that the good thing was like there were also no neighbors and no one cared about the music, how loud it was. I treated the room well. I put like some cloth around and some foam and stuff, and I bought a really big system.
What was your setup? that first setup?
At that time, I started to get into hardware. I had a friend who was like a real hardware geek. Basically, his interest was mostly hardware. And he was also a bit enthusiastic and nerdy about building his own sequencers and synthesizers and circuit bending and stuff. And he taught me a lot about the theory of like synthesis and just producing in general. But at that time I already felt really quickly that we have a different approach in the end. Like I was more about the process and the content and the personal individual vibe I want to put into the production. He was more about the actual technical part of it. So we started to separate there a little bit in the approach, but I'm to this day super grateful to him because he showed me really the theoretic base footwork of this of the topic of music production. And then I kind of locked up myself in the studio, and I was working part-time, 5 hours a day, like 4 days a week, from 8 to 1, as a physiotherapist. Was a very easy job, not a lot of money obviously, but the rent was not expensive. We were living there as 2 persons, my girlfriend and me, and we had a pretty low budget life, but we had everything we needed, and I had a lot of time to make music. Like every afternoon after work I was there until night, and 2 years I just played around, but I made a lot of music in that time. But all stuff that I was proud of, but there I started to create an idea of my personal individual note that I want to have. Not like
note. Did you say?
Note, or like I would say
sound.
In German you say as this description of like having a flavor, you say eine persönliche Note haben. Also
okay.
You say have a personal note.
Sound, I guess we would say.
Yeah, but it's even more broad. Sound is already specific.
Yeah.
But when we say note, in German we use it also like as a more non-specific description of a style.
Okay.
Yeah, personal style. It wasn't like a manufactured idea. So I want to have this sound. Mm-hmm. It was more like a slow process of naturally, organically creating the own idea and having the room for that. And up until this day, I'm convinced that the most important thing when it comes to finding individuality and finding an uncompromised approach to personal creation is the fact that you do not want to have any kind of pressure or any kind of expectation. Like having a completely uncompromised approach to your creative output, and that's what I had there.
This is really interesting though. How do you marry that with then being at a stage now where you are very successful, and how do you not allow any pressure to come in regards to, okay, the next release needs to be as good as the last, or the next release needs to keep people coming to my shows? You know, let's say you do another album for Innovisions, like they have that sound, they're expecting this. How do you manage to keep that pressure out of your creative space?
It's a constant learning process, and for me the most important thing is to keep it easy, like to chill, and not to setting goals for myself, not to having high career goals like this, you know, like not having not letting other people or myself putting pressure on myself, also having a life on the side which has nothing to do with music, family life, sports, hobby, stuff that completely distracts me of music. Also having the pressure, not having like never the pressure of like the obligation of having to make music. So I never take a job that tells me, okay, here's the deadline. You have to produce this and that music. Until then, that's what we need. Please sign a contract here. I would never do that.
Okay.
That would kill me basically and my whole creativity. And I learned that because that's where it starts, that you get into trouble. That's where it starts, where you really put pressure on yourself. I mean, some people can do it. There are people that work better under pressure, but just to say and to note here that that's my subjective, personal kind of approach, you know? Mm-hmm. Some people are better under pressure. I suck under pressure. I need a free-flowing kind of approach to my creativity, because then it's pure and then it's myself. Because for me, the most important thing is not really content and a career goal, but the most important thing that I want to have in my music is kind of a ventilation, or like a like that I can decompress stuff that is going on inside of my head in a not intentional way, you know, like kind of a therapy, so I can just let it out, and I don't want to have any ideas behind it that influence me too much. And when I take a project that gives me a lot of pressure, with pressure also there comes a lot of expectation, and expectation also means in detail means detailed expectation, maybe, you know, like a certain color that is expected, or a certain vibe that is expected. But I just cannot, I'm not working like that, you know, like I want to keep my output pure, also unjudged by myself, even in a way. It's for me, creativity is completely subjective anyways. Like, it's not, I can't say objectively this is good or this is bad. Tastes are different, first of all. Second of all, it's always a matter of perspective, and it's not something that you judge as you would judge a professional athlete in a NBA basketball team, where you would say, okay, his shot percentage is at 80% this year. He's a great player and they are going to win the championship, you know, like where you put like statistics into something so you can see if it's good or bad. So, I mean, yes, you can measure a music piece that is released by sales, but when I produce it, I don't care about that, you know, like I don't want to have this kind of approach to think, okay, I'm gonna make this record because I want to have this number of sales, you know. I mean, I know that people work like this, and there are many different approaches which are fine and not judged in a bad way by myself, but it's just not the way I work, because that's just not fun, you know, for me. I just don't enjoy that. And so I keep doing my thing, and actually now I can speak easy because I just was in a period where for some reason I just produced a lot of stuff, and I just finished a new album. There's nothing out yet. I also can't say the title nor the label, but everything is fixed, and I'm very happy about it, because it was one of those things where I was really like, within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the whole thing basically was done in the core. And then I just had to do some fine adjustments. And it was really like one of those experiences in music productions and creative outlets that are in the way that I like them to be. You know, like uncompromised, no pressure, no plan behind the project. Just naturally coming and releasing, in terms of like writing it, the music, and then having it there and then thinking about it. Okay, so actually there is an album here. What happened? And then thinking about, okay, what were we doing actually with this now?
So you can't tell us when it's...
Probably in fall this year.
With who?
No, I can't
You can't
say
tell.
it yet. It's fixed yet, but okay. I can't say it yet.
Okay, what about the title or...
Also the title.
Is it going in the same direction as Dämmerlicht, which was, you know,
no, it's more
down tempo?
No, it's not that down tempo. Mm-hmm. All I can say is that it's on a label where I was already, and that could
be a many.
Yeah.
Afterlife, dystopian, Innovisions.
For sure, it's not the reinvention of the wheel, I would say, the album, but I would say it's very personal. It's very. I'm very convinced that it's the sound that I want to have, and also the sound that I kind of stand for. And I'm looking forward to release it, and it was super fun making it.
This is Valvate by Recondite. in your timeline, we'd got to the point, you've been 2 years in your studio, the studio that led out from the basement into the light, and you're finding your sound and finding out how to be your most creative. And then where does Berlin come in?
Yeah, basically right after. I was 2 years there, and then I suddenly felt like, okay, we kind of reached the limit here of what we can do in this kind of situation. And I was like, okay, the decision would be staying here, maybe working my way up a little bit in this therapy center where I was working to get maybe a little bit more money, maybe working a little bit more hours. But also I didn't really want to do that because I was occupied and busy in my free time because I was making a lot of music. So I had to make a decision, where are we going from there? And I had a lot of friends in Berlin at that time because they were all studying there. Like 3 of my best friends were studying in Berlin, and that's why I also visited at some times Berlin already. And you know, like it was like, when was this, 2007, 2008? So 11 years ago, roundabout. And they were already a little bit in the scene there, like going to Berghain, Panorama Bar, Bar 5 and Bar 25 at that time. And it was nice to go there, to sleep, you know, over at my friends in his WG and enjoy this Berlin life a little bit. I experienced a completely different approach to urban life. That's why I also mentioned it while I was in Munich, that I had no idea how to approach city life. Like I was lost there. I felt really trapped also. But there in Berlin, I was able to also cherish it a little bit. You know, the upsides of urban life, having a bigger social network, like friends, because this for me was never really such a big thing, you know, like having many friends around. And in Berlin, this already started to build up, even though I wasn't even living there yet. So I was starting to look for also jobs, so that I could maybe do the move if I find a job, to be safe and to have like a little income there. And then suddenly I found a job as a personal trainer at a big chain there, which was not great money, but was a good job because it was not full-time. It was like a, let's say 2/3 job, like 25, 30 hours a week. And it was close to the location where I wanted to live anyways. And then I applied for the job, and I was lucky because with the physiotherapy education as a personal trainer, you have always good chances to get into a personal trainer job because it's a, let's say, high education also in this field, because it's a medicinal, stately examined, approved kind of profession. So I got the job with my former girlfriend. We moved to Berlin because she also said, because she wasn't from the area where I was from, she was from a completely different area, so for her it wasn't like leaving home or something, so she was open for it. And we moved there, we moved to Friedrichshain. We found a nice apartment because we had to find a compromise because we had 2 cats, and we found like a floor level, like ground level apartment with a little access through the window into a little garden. And so we were able to bring the cats. The cats were still able to go outside, so this was kind of important to us. And one upside of the apartment was that it had a basement, which you could access from the apartment with stairs, where I obviously put in my studio.
Amazing.
And it wasn't big. It was 1 room, 1 bedroom upstairs, then the basement thing, which was also a bit moldy, unfortunately, in the end.
It's not good for your gear.
Yeah. Anyways, it was a very good start for us. Unfortunately, then our relationship kind of went apart because she didn't feel that well in Berlin, and I was already like changing my life a little bit. You know, I had a different job. I was getting to know people from the music scene a little bit. Also, I still was working a lot in the studio. I had less time, and yeah, she moved away. She moved back to her home area where she's very happy now. She has 2 kids and everything is fine. And I kept on working in this personal training facility, and I kind of actually enjoyed that. I worked myself up also a little bit. I was starting to be also an educator, like in a specific kind of training method, where I was giving like educations to other personal trainers on the weekend, which also gave me a little side income, because obviously I didn't have any gigs anymore, because in Bavaria they were my only connections to have gigs, and there in Berlin I didn't have any promoter connections or booking agency connections yet. But then funnily, I mean, a lot of people know it, obviously, but I got to know Paul Rose, Scuba, while training him, you know, at the personal training facility, and he was becoming one of my clients. You know, we got to know each other. I gave him some training plans. I gave him some advice. But at some point, you know, he was really stressed out at this time, because he was like touring like a crazy person, and he was really like traveling every weekend heavily, and he had to do something about his whole like well-being, you know, like it was just too much stress and too much stress for the body and mind. So he made the right decision to get some assist and some help to get like into a better physical shape. So we met every week. And he really also improved a lot, and we got along really well. And after some time, after a year or something working together, I also for the first time showed him my music, because I was a bit ashamed as well. Not ashamed, it's the wrong word, but I was like just...
Intimidated? Yeah,
intimidated, and also a bit careful, you know. I didn't want to feel him to be used or something. I gave him like a mixtape of mine, and he really liked it, and suddenly he also invited me to play at his substance party at Berghain. So basically my first show in Berlin was...
At Berghain?
At Panorama Bar, yes.
Wow, that sounds like it must have been terrible for you.
Yeah, it was a crazy, very bad experience. No, I'm joking. It was actually, I was playing after Giles Peterson.
Oh, wow.
And before Maya Jane Coles that night.
Were you intimidated then?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah.
But what was the experience like?
It was great.
Yeah.
I only got 45 minutes slot because Paul squeezed me in last minute. Mm-hmm. But it was enough to leave a little bit of an impression and to enjoy it. Also, like the crowd and myself enjoyed it. And I mean, at that time, that was like 2011. In 2011, my first record came out on my own label, Plangent Records. And so I had a little bit of, you know, something in my sleeve already, you know. I wasn't like completely a noob, you know. So at least I had my own little label. I had some vinyls out. Then it kind of kept going a little bit. I started to get my first gigs. I started to get a little bit of press. I remember Todd Burns from Resident Advisor was a really important person for me at the beginning. He gave me some really good support, and he really understood my music. We met, we had nice chat together. I remember that very well in Friedrichshain. We had a coffee, and then I invited him home. I showed him some of my new productions, and that helped me also a lot to gain a little bit more, let's say, exposure. And then, you know, like still it took some time, and it wasn't rushed. You know, 2012, 2013, but then 2014 it started to pick up, and a lot of gigs came.
I was wondering about, you've said before that you've always released on labels with people that you know.
Yeah.
So did that all happen in Berlin, that you then just in clubs were meeting the Afterlife crew, and you were meeting Innovisions? Like, how did that all come about?
Well, that really came with like the start of, let's say, a career, in terms of the situation where I also had to quit my other job, and where I was just more and more involved into touring. And then on touring you meet people like at shows wherever it is around the world, but also obviously through internet and just getting in touch via email. People write you, you write people. People get aware of you and they have ideas. They ask you if you would have some music maybe that they could release if they would like to, or if I would like to. And also some people that I met by chance. Those were kind of the most mostly was coincidence, I would say. Like I said, I never had a situation where somebody walked up to me and said, okay, we want this and that from you. Can you make this up until this point of time? Because I would probably have declined it anyways. So it was all naturally. I think that's something that I really also want to keep.
Interesting. So you always finish music and then you go to a label, or they come to you, they say, have you got any tracks? And you go, well, actually, I've got this album. Pretty much. Okay. Yes. So you're not, okay. So that's how you take that pressure cooker out of things. It's clever. So everything's kicking off in 2014, and was it what you imagined, the touring and the gigging and the traveling?
I had no idea how it would be like, what it would be like, because honestly, I did this Australia, New Zealand, Thailand thing I told you about. I enjoyed it, obviously, because it was like overwhelming nature, especially in New Zealand. But I couldn't even, reflecting after a few years, I couldn't even enjoy it as much as I should or could have enjoyed it, maybe, if I would have been in a different situation. Because I was just young and I was thinking about stuff. I didn't know where future goes, really. What I was trying to say is that the traveling part itself wasn't that, alluring to me. Living out of the backpack, traveling from A to B every day, changing locations. It's not really my thing, really, to be honest. I like it somehow because I'm used to it. Also, as a child, as a kid, we went to holidays a lot. We went to Italy, we went to France, whatever. We went to the USA once, and I really always enjoyed going on vacation with my family. But the more intense traveling is not so much my thing, because as a child I also was used to being pretty much in a certain environment all the time. And also I wasn't really used to the hectic situation of an urban situation. And when you are traveling a lot, you have to go to airports, you have to be in cars, in buses, trains, cities, train stations, etc. And it was just stressing me out. At the beginning of touring a lot, I didn't realize that so much because I was just overwhelmed. First of all, with the situation, with the development of this unexpected turn of things in my life, and also of the locations where you go. Suddenly you play a show in Taiwan, outside of Taipei, on the beach. What is going on here? You don't even get time to reflect that. So you have to reflect it afterwards, I think.
How do you ground yourself?
I ground myself in not letting me talk into stuff by other people.
Like what?
That my career should go this way, that I should play more shows, that I should take this or that opportunity, that I should maybe take more chances, whatever, that I stay true to my personal gut feeling that tells me what is good for me or what is bad for me. When I feel that more than 10 shows a month is not good for my whole construct of this job, which feeds on creativity, then I know that I'm kind of sawing on my own chair foot. That's kind of an expression in German, you know.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So this is the worst thing that could happen for me. Basically, and I felt it, you know. 2014, 15, I played 135 shows a year. So it was like over 260 shows in 24 months. And that really took a toll, I have to say. I got like tinnitus, I had like ear problems.
How is it now?
Yeah, it's gone. I know where it was from.
Amazing.
And it was not only the traveling, but it was like the stress. I also had different kind of stress because we moved actually back to Bavaria, which wasn't a good idea at all, which we also skipped after 3 months. We moved back to Berlin. It was also a good experience still because it was like a lesson somehow to learn what you really want. But it was a stressful period. And I realized that also the tension in my body, like the physical tension, muscles, you know, neck, back, was not right anymore. You know, I have kind of a sensitivity for that because I was working in this job for 10 years, so I developed also a little bit of an eye for like signals in the body, and I realized, okay, it's like this. If you are like a stone, you can go on, but one thing is for sure, creativity is going to be gone, no chance, and your body's gonna pay you back for this 100%. Maybe your bank account will be full, but if my bank account is not empty and there is something there, I'm fine actually, you know. So I decided, okay, I'm in the lucky position where I at the moment have a lot of gig requests. So this was like 2016, 17, and I'm also happy to tour because it's amazing. But I cannot take all the shows and I cannot play more than 90 shows a year anymore, because if I do this, I compromise the whole thing and I also put it at risk, and I don't want to do this. And this is a decision that you have to make for yourself. Nobody can tell you this because nobody can look into you inside yourself. You can maybe share thoughts with your closest people, you know, like girlfriend, wife, partner, in my case, parents maybe, friends. But in the end, you have to make the decision. You have to have this gut feeling I was talking about. You know, if you're a rock solid person that doesn't care and just pushes it through, you know, it's fine. It's great. If you even enjoy it, even better. But for me, it was different. I had to make a decision. And so I adapted. And now I'm actually in a very well-organized, kind of balanced situation. You know, like 2018 was already very, very nice, I have to say. It was the right amount of gigs, the right amount of time for myself. Also time where I let it go completely, you know, where I play video games and do nothing. Play basketball 4 times a week or something, you know, like living a complete... This is a privilege, a huge privilege. To have this kind of life, like that's for me a privilege. For other people, there are different privileges. There's the privilege that there is like a stacked bank account and traveling every day to a different city. Fine. For me, a privilege is to stay at home, you know, do my hobbies, enjoy my life, and also have this kind of easygoing flow in my life, you know, where I know, okay, actually the next 4 days I have nothing to do.
You're listening to Warg by Recondite.
What's your plan with Plangent this year? I mean, you've started a podcast, right?
Yeah, I mean, with Plangent also I want to have this very simple, easygoing approach, you know, like I have no plans with Plangent. I have a new record coming out on Plangent, not myself, but it's actually 3 remixes that were done for my Dämmerlicht album. One is by Isabella Ucci, one is done by Alex Do, my friend from Dystopian, former roommate as well, and one is done by Dominik Eulberg, big inspiration, and it's a really nice remix EP actually. It's coming out end of March, I guess. It's not 100% fixed yet, but the vinyls are being pressed now, and they did a really good job. So this is coming.
Digital too?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I was talking to Alex. He made a few really nice tracks. Maybe we're gonna do a new EP with him, and see what happens. You know, this style I want to have on Plangent, this like not aggressive, laid back, melancholic, melodic, airy, really, let's say, also easygoing style, also in terms of the musical content. it's also not so hard, not so easy to find. You know, like a lot of producers are also trying to make a big impression with their first releases or with the releases they do. So they try to make also club-ready material, playable material, which I also understand is fair enough, but that's not the main focus on Plangent. But on Plangent is also not the main focus to have like only ambient records. But yeah, every now and then I find something which I think it fits, and then I put it out. But you know, I'm trying to make a break even with every record. Obviously it doesn't work all the time, but if I make that, it's already a very nice thing, and I'm probably just gonna keep it like that.
In regards to aesthetics, like just thinking about the art photography that you've got on your Instagram, they're your photos?
Yeah.
They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
It's really refreshing to look at your social media because there's not loads of selfies, and you've got 102,000 followers on Instagram, and you just follow Plangent Records, and that's it.
Yeah, but this I just did recently, honestly.
Oh, you just unfollowed loads of people?
Yeah, because I sometimes just can't look at all the things that get posted, you know. It's overwhelming. So I don't want to, you know, I understand that I want to have also a platform to inform people about stuff that I do. I want to give people an impression of my aesthetic idea. So I use the platforms like Instagrams and Facebook, but not every time when I want to open it and create content there, I want to see the content.
So you were finding it was disturbing you creatively, was it, or
yeah,
your inner peace? What was?
Yeah, also like it's just sometimes it's just too invasive. You know, like it would be like when I walk into my living room and the TV switches on by himself. You know, but I'm not even into watching TV. You know what I mean? So I don't want to consume content if I'm not open for it. And when you open Instagram, it's there. You know, like the home button, everything, you check what's going on your profile, and then suddenly you see, okay, post. And then you start to scroll through, like, you don't know even what's happening with yourself, but you just look at all the pictures, and the thumb goes up and down, and it's like scrolling, and then you come from here to there, and suddenly you are half an hour already on Instagram, and you didn't even plan to do this. So I created another Instagram account for my own, where I don't post anything, but if I want to see content of my things that I follow, which would be like Nintendo Europe or something like that, or National Geographic Channel or NBA or whatever, I specifically go there and I watch what they post, and
So I thought, you know, you just developed this whole following and only followed yourself, and that was, but no, you just unfollowed all your friends. Did anyone?
No, friends I didn't have on my Instagram anyways, because also it's not a friend, it's not a person, it's not me. You know, Lawrence, who is talking to, you know, like his mother or his best friend. It's still, Recondite is still a figure of a music aesthetic. You know, it's, of course, it's me, but still I think it's important to also be able to separate, you know, the stage personality, if you will, to the personal being at home on the couch person, you know, because obviously it exists. Otherwise, you can't also get the distance to it, which can lead into a very hard, I would say, life approach, because then you are always in this role, and you were not born in this role, you know?
Do you feel like there's an alter ego side of you then that comes out when you go to gig?
Not like if I would put on a mask in that way, but still it's a show, you know, like you play a show. Every time you go on stage, you play a show. It can be the most personal, authentic, and convincing display ever, but still you go on there and play a show. It's you're not at home in your underwear, you know, chilling out. So it's kind of it's a natural switch, I would say. It's not like, okay, now I'm Recondite. It's still me, and it's my idea and my aesthetic and my idea of content that I created. But in the end, it's also just a part of me, you know. And because you asked me earlier how I would stay grounded, and this is one of the things actually, like separating also, you know, and not getting overwhelmed by your own created self, you know, like not being compromised by the pressure that you put on yourself because you elevate your alter ego about your personality, you know, the natural personality. So this is what I'm trying to separate, yeah.
So you've got this new album coming up. You have a new EP coming out on Plangent in March. You've got a lot of gigs as well in March from what I saw on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Where are you playing exactly?
This Friday in Hamburg at PAL. Saturday I go to Portugal. And then I go to Singapore, 2 shows in Australia. I think after that I'm actually in my home area in Munich at Blitz, playing with my friends there. I'm also gonna play a back-to-back set after my live set there with Roland Appel. It's gonna be fun. Just did it recently here in Berlin at Klappe, which was super fun. DJ back-to-back, like feels like in the old days when I used to DJ. Was with the right people, it's a really fun thing to do. Then, during the summer there might be a few weekends where I'm gonna be at the limit of my capacity. But then also I try to have off weekends even during the summer, because like I said, I have to find a good balance and have the right amount of gigs. And it looks like it's gonna be a well-balanced summer also.
I was listening to your podcast and you were talking about your musical education and how you rejected the guitar and the framework of like normal musical education because for you that wasn't inspiring, although you do respect other musicians that have applied themselves in that way. And I was really surprised when I heard that, because I'm listening to your music, which is so musical and melodic. I was wondering, do you just do everything by ear, or do you actually know some theory?
I think, honestly, I do everything by ear. Yeah. Because I have no musical education, so I have no really... Also when I don't know, to be honest, when I look on Beatport with, the sections that are offered to analyze the track, like there's a track and then it says B minor. It's hard for me to tell what this exactly means, to be honest. But yeah, I don't think it's that important, to be honest, if you want to create some musical content. Like it is if you want to, I've been to Berliner Philharmonica recently, and I watched a huge concert of, cello and piano and all the instruments that are happening there. It was amazing, and they displayed some I think Johann Sebastian Bach it was, or something. I can't remember for sure. It was really impressive, the acoustics, everything, and they have to be such pros in this kind of field, reading notes and playing exactly what they read, in sync with many other people, controlled by a conductor who knows exactly what's going on with all those musicians. But it's a much more professional and theoretical approach to music than what I do. I choose a very naive approach to music, sitting there and doing try and error, how do you say try? Or
trial and error.
Trial and error, yeah.
But try and error works too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're building a track up, the process of that, then when you're triggering MIDI, let's say, you just don't know any scales or chords, or
right.
Considering it's so musical, that really surprises me.
Yeah, maybe it also helps to be uncompromised. I don't know. It's because it shows also that you can have a musical ear without having the education.
Of course.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm also not that interested in the theory, to be honest. It kind of bores me in a way. But I'm also impressed by people. For example, the husband of my mom, he can write down all the notes when he hears a song. It's crazy for me. I have no idea how he's doing this. It amazes me. But
perfect pitch.
Yeah, he just can analyze a song and write down the notes yeah, for me it's like a Chinese language. I mean, I learned, of course, that there are half tones and stuff, and there's like this ladder and the key, but that's like 4th grade music class, and there it stopped basically. Yeah, it's somehow interesting, but it doesn't really. It's not part of what I do, you know. It's because also what I do is, like I said, it's you know, I play around with music. It's I don't do it. It doesn't feel like I do it professionally. You know, it's like playing Legos. You know, it's like putting together bricks and realizing, okay, this fit actually is not a fit here. We need, first of all, different colors. Second of all, different stones, because the structure is not good. And then, okay, this is nice. And then sometimes something comes out that suits my personal filter of stuff that I like. And this is basically, I think, the most important part of how I get to something, or how I can get to a finished product, that my filter filters down more and more stuff, where I hear something, some harmonies which suit a specific vibe that does something to me. It's get condensed and more condensed and filtered, and then at the end there is something that has a meaning to me, and that's the end product then usually. Yeah, sometimes I would wish that I would know more about harmonies on the keyboard, you know, like chords and stuff. But then again, also I'm a bit careful about it, because I think the more theoretic I go, the more I think about what I do. And I think I also said it in this Ableton interview that you mentioned, that I would, like in terms of music gear and invention and future outlooks or potential stuff that could be invented, the thing that I would be most curious about would be a device that I would connect to my brain, like like a helmet or something, where I would sit down in the most relaxed position, and where I could close my eyes and then control Ableton with my brain.
I was at Sonar in the summer. There were some prototypes for some interesting headgear that was going in that direction. So
yeah, I also informed myself a little bit, but I think now you can already trigger a little bit MIDI notes. You know, I would like to be able to control like the mouse cursor and play piano and go through the whole software by thoughts.
But that's interesting for you, having had such a physical childhood and being a physiotherapist and being someone that works physically, that you would want to just be still in the music making process.
Maybe it makes sense like that, you know, two different kind of approaches of the main things that you do in your life. Because still like that, I do a lot of sports, I do a lot of movement, I also read a lot about, you know, up-to-date and anatomy researches or studies about physiology and biomechanics, and I watch a lot of YouTube stuff, which is actually like really interesting, how like trainers build up their own channels, come up with new training methods that are very close or merged between orthopedics, physiotherapy and personal training, like really professional but also hands-on and practical. Still something that I spend a lot of time with. I play a lot of basketball, I work out, not like a crazy person, you know, like not like enthusiastic in terms of having crazy goals, but just for the fun of it. So this still plays a big role in my life, but it's completely far away from how I make music and from the music itself. So maybe it's good to have this kind of plus-minus thing, you know, to have the different poles.
It's very interesting. For me as a music maker, the idea of being completely still while making music makes me feel a bit queasy. Somehow like the movement and the vibrations and that's part of it.
Yeah, maybe you sit there in the couch with your helmet on and then suddenly you just move a bit still. Can happen, why not? But you can also dance and have your helmet on. And still not having this kind of weird distraction with this mouse in your hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or with these fingers on your
trackpad.
Yeah.
Well, I think you should contact Ableton and start working with him and see to come out with the Recondite.
Yeah, the Recondite helmet.
The Recondite helmet. I mean, it sounds like it should be called something like that. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that we've missed that you would like to talk to the good people of Beatport about? You've got the new release in March, you've got this secret album coming out in the autumn that we're not allowed to know anything about.
No, I mean, I'm glad that you invited me. Thanks for your good question, the good conversation. It was really fun. I always enjoy talking about stuff, when people are interested in my stuff. It's always nice. And yeah, I'm actually using Beatport again since I do the back-to-back DJ sets now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's very good to hear. Thank you for saying
that. I
that.
made this chart also. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Make sure you check out Recondite's chart and the new release in March and the secret album coming in the autumn.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Tarjei Nygaard. This is Blausa, out on ESP Institute. This is Course, remixed by Justin Cudmore, originally by Joshua James, out on Fantasy Sound. This is Skywalking by Methame out on Afterlife Records. This is Old Winter's Day by DJ Richard out on Dar Records. You've been listening to Recondite in conversation with Beatport. I've been your host, Tigerlight. Thanks for listening. Beatport Podcast.